Welcome to the Profitable NDIS Provider Podcast, where we're joined by your hosts, Tania Gomez and Paul Bryan. In each episode, we'll be sharing valuable insights and tips to help you turn your NDIS business into a profitable venture. So whether you're just starting out or looking to take your business to the next level, you've come to the right place. Let's stop surviving and start thriving.
Welcome to the Profitable NDIS Provider Podcast. I'm Tania and I'm joined by my co-host Paul. Hey Paul, how you going?
G'day Tania, great to be here. And today we are joined by Jonathon Power of Astalty NDIS Provider Software and the NDIS Success Community. Mate, great to have you here. How you going?
Good morning, guys. I'm going great. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I know Paul and I have both been helping out as a part of your community in doing webinars, and you came along to a few of our events and sponsored those. So it's really great to have you on and be able to talk about tech in the NDIS and the amazing things that you're doing in the space as well. For those of our listeners who might not be familiar with Astalty or with you, do you want to give us a quick introduction to yourself and to what Astalty is and does?
Yeah, so Astalty is a business operations software that looks after all your operations from invoicing to, participant information to case noting, compliance, and much more. So I myself, I've been working in the industry for about 8 years now. Started off operating a provider way back in 2017. Still operating a provider and got my exposure to the industry that way. So throughout that journey, we kind of realized there was a big need for software in the industry. And we started building Astalty around about 3 years ago.
Amazing. Wonderful. Now, today we're talking about NDIS tech in general. And I guess this is a question that I get asked a lot, is around the essential components of a tech stack for a provider. So if someone is starting for the first time or they've outgrown their current software stack, what do you think every provider needs to run their business, run their operations and compliance seamlessly?
Yeah, good question. So I think if you're a new business, like the most important thing is just to kind of take stock of what you have at the moment. Take stock of your current business operations and then have a little bit of a think about the future and where do you see your business in, the next 12 months, the next 2 years, the next 5 years, for example. I think a problem a lot of business owners make is they just rush into these decisions. It's like, I've got a business, now I need software. And they'll do a quick Google search and they'll jump on the first thing that kind of pops up. They'll go and do a single software demonstration. I think it's very easy when you're new to kind of you go from having no systems at all to then the first time you see any software, it's like, wow, it does that? You mean I don't need to use my spreadsheet anymore? I don't need to do my things in Word. I've got this piece of software. And so I think it's very easy just to get wooed by the first thing. So I think first of all, if you're a new business, just take it slow, take stock, see what's out there, do lots and lots of demonstrations, and then make sure whatever it is going to be fit for purpose.
Yeah, great advice. I see that happen quite a lot. I think the other thing that I see a lot is people choosing the cheapest option, thinking that cheapest is best, but then I also see them outgrow that software very quickly. And the challenge with that is that obviously then you have a lot of pain in data migration, and moving to your first system kind of seems quite easy because you don't really have anything, but then to move all of that in one system into another system and mapping over the data fields and even just that learning curve from unlearning something and learning something new is quite a challenge. And I've done it myself. I've jumped from CRM to CRM. I think we did a CRM a year there for a little while because we weren't happy with what we got. But it's a mountain of pain to actually shift systems. Yes. So you really do need to know what are the features that you need now, but what are the features that you need in 2 years' time so that you're not having to move, that frequently.
Absolutely. And I think there's platforms out there that kind of can assist you with that as well. So I think going and speaking with some of those guys so they can kind of point you in the right direction. So it might limit the amount of time you spend doing X amount of software demonstrations, especially if you're in a rush. So definitely check out some of those platforms as well to kind of speed up that decision-making process if you're in a rush.
Yeah, absolutely. I frequently recommend Techability. I know that they've tested 90 plus systems in the space, and they do that matching tool that's quite cost effective that says, okay, these are the top systems for you, that then drill down on what are the features you need now. And I think just anytime you engage a third party consultant to do a bit of a research for you, they just draw those things out from you, like exactly what are the features you need. Have you thought about rostering? Have you thought about compliance? Have you thought about risk assessments? Have you thought about these things? Because especially if it's the first time choosing a system, you might not have even thought about what things you actually need, and what features are there, and that you might not know that there are features and that are different between the systems as well, or systems that are better at one thing over another.
Absolutely. And I think like going back to your first question around the tech stack, like if you're engaging with someone like that, you might not need as much of a tech stack, right? But like if you go for the very first thing that only handles maybe your biggest business problem, which might be your scheduling, it might not handle compliance, it might not handle, document generation, all those sorts of things. And then you wind up with a huge tech stack.
I've definitely seen that quite a number of times with providers where they've got, multiple systems and there's multiple crossovers with each piece of software, and they end up using each of them at about 30 to 50%, which is, it's obviously a massive cost, some of the softwares, as you start to layer them up, and it creates a lot of discontinuity for the team that are actually using them, right? When they are using multiple softwares, it becomes a bit harder. How does Astalty integrate with other software tools usually used by NDIS providers, and how does that help make a tech stack work?
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, we currently integrate with a number of different pieces of software. So for example, Xero for all your finance, we've got like a complete two-way integration.
Great.
So we actually send the invoices on your behalf to where they need to go, whether it's self-plan managed participants, plus we create the bulk upload file, which goes to, and then we send all that data over to Xero for you. So you don't need to recreate it in your accounting software. It's already there. And the beauty of that is because it's already there, all you need to do is reconcile that in Xero, and then Xero talks back to Astalty to say, hey, this has been paid, this is still outstanding. So it's cutting down that double handling. So you're not going from like Xero reconciling or any other accounting platform and then having to do the exact same task in your CRM. So as well as that, we just finished our integration with Google Calendar and Outlook as well.
Brilliant.
So just bringing everything into Astalty so that what's coming up in your day. You can see everything there. Everything you create in Astalty is then going to pre-populate on your Outlook or Google Calendar. And it allows you to kind of like create tasks and build for things directly from that calendar. So again, just like reducing your tech stack or trying to reduce your tech stack and then bringing everything back into Astalty. So it handles a lot of that stuff for you. The last integration we have is with Dropbox Sign. And this is probably one of my favorite integrations just because of the workflow that we've developed. And how it works is you can send any document from Astalty just like you would Dropbox Sign or a DocuSign basically. Mm-hmm. Looks and feels like Astalty, but it's actually Dropbox Sign under the hood. And the beauty of that is the way that we've designed it is you could create a budget, create a schedule of supports, you can create that service agreement, send it for signing, and then you can track the expiry date of that document. And that all happens in the one workflow. Great. So the way we've set it up is like 1, 2, 3, 4 process. So it's not like I'll go to Word, I create my schedule of supports, my service, I import it into DocuSign, and I then send that. Then I track my expiry in the spreadsheet. There's 3 systems there. So it handles all that stuff for you. And really that's what we're trying to achieve with Astalty is, we talk about tech stacks a lot. We're trying to reduce the tech stacks. I'm trying to get away from tech stacks as much as I can. And a lot of that comes from operating an NDIS business. And it's such a huge pain point for so many providers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I know that my tech stack just keeps growing and growing and growing. And it's constantly like, okay, how do we reduce this? How do we bring things back in? What can we do to, especially if you have things like Zoom outside, or you're using things like Calendly, trying to have a look at, okay, well, Google now does all of that if you use Google. So you could use, Google Meets, and you can use Google Scheduler as opposed to needing those other items. Looking at how do you simplify it. I think think for me, I love tech and I don't want to make compromises. So I get a bit, sometimes prefer to have an extra piece of something that does that thing perfectly as opposed to compromise with how Google does it or Microsoft does it. Calendly is a good example. I do currently use, we've just moved to Microsoft, and inside Microsoft they have Bookings, but Bookings isn't quite as good as Calendly. And so I'm kind of on the fence of, do we want to pay another subscription and add another system? And for me, it's not really the cost. It's really the efficiency of staff for them having to move through so many systems is what I'm constantly trying to look at. Okay, in this role, what are the systems that person has? So my compliance manager, how many systems does she need to move through to do her work? The person who answers the phone, our admin team, how many systems do they need to look at to find that information about that client to give better customer service? And constantly trying to see how we streamline that so that, the ideal is single sign in. You sign in one place, you have access to everything and transparency over everything. But that seems like an elusive dream sometimes. It seems like you can do integrations, and that is amazing that you can do an API or an LTI between different systems to push and pull information. But not all systems allow that as well. Not all of them are open to that for data protection reasons or other reasons. So it's good to hear that Astalty actually does have quite a lot of integrations to make that simpler so that you can look at reducing that tech stack and really optimizing your participant lifecycle or your staff lifecycle. So my question next for you, Jonathon, we talk a lot on this podcast about profitability, and we know that the disability worker cost model allows us a really small profit margin, and it's a real pinch for providers at the moment around how can they make more money. And obviously we want to reduce our costs across the board, and if we can reduce our costs, that's great, but we also want to increase efficiency at the same time, which is what we're talking about with things like automations and integrations, and the example you gave of pushing and pulling information from place to place. What kind of features or functionalities should providers prioritize to really make sure they're running an efficient workflow, whether it be a workflow to onboard a new participant or to onboard a new staff member, any of those kind of functions? How do they make that as efficient as possible?
Yeah, again, I think it's just coming back to looking at your tech stack and making sure that whatever you explore has those options. A lot of this administration stuff that providers do, it's labor intensive, right? It takes a lot of time to go through compliance, onboarding, all these sorts of things. So trying to find a system that can do it for you. We go back to talking about profitability. If all your time is consumed by handling a lot of this manual administration, then that's time that you're not spending on growing your business, on building culture or managing and building a great team. So if you're worried about all that compliance and all that other stuff, then, that's less time for everything else, which in the long run is going to bring the most value to your business. So really trying to look for those pieces of software that can automate that compliance, automate your onboarding, all that sort of stuff, because otherwise you're in the weeds all day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've had a number of providers who, when we've sort of taken a step back and look at, maybe the software that they're using or the amount of people in administration, they've sort of realized that they've employed a person in a place where a piece of software really could have just done that bit of work. And so they have somebody there, maybe, 10 hours a week, literally just to do some administration. When we looked at the administration they were doing, it was just transferring data consistently for that time. And, when they look at it, go, it's very tight. They were only using their software, at a very small scale. I've found that one of the greatest questions any provider can ask of their software provider is, hey, does it do that? Or what else does it do that I'm not currently using? It's amazing how so many, I think, of the day-to-day administration of a provider is taken up with manual tasks that they already own a piece of software, or maybe the next level up or a different software will solve for them. How do you find that the right tech stack will help? And as small as you like the tech stack, that's all right. I use less tech as much as possible. How does the right stack help providers scale their operations while maintain that high level of service?
For sure. So I've seen a number of providers out there that are using like things like Deputy. You guys know Deputy, like the rostering and scheduling software. Unfortunately, that doesn't produce your invoices for you, right? So like a lot of providers are using Deputy, but then they're using like something else like Xero or MyOb or QuickBooks to do their invoicing. So that right there, right? You go back to what you said about that person who's just doing the data transfer. Like that's the data transfer, right? That's let's set up this schedule in Deputy. Let's get that into a spreadsheet. Now let's get that into my QuickBooks and let's do all of our invoicing there. So like that right there, that role basically could be eliminated with the right piece of software. But there's so many providers still doing that, whether it's through Deputy and MyOb, Deputy QuickBooks, and things of that nature. So like that's, one way that you can maximize efficiency there and get that profitability back by looking at things like that. You spoke about people not using their software to its full potential as well. We have a thing at Astalty where we regularly review software with providers, and we do this monthly. So like you just jump on a call with half an hour with our customer success team, and we literally just go through features and like, do you know it does this? Do you know it does that? Do you know it does this? And just we go through all the new features that we've been releasing and making sure that people are getting the most out of their software. But like you said, all it takes is a question to be like, hey, does it? So I don't think people should ever be afraid to ask if it's possible, because you might be pleasantly surprised that there's been a feature under the hood for 2 years and you're just like, wow, I wish I knew that, this existed, because it's been, we've been spending hours on this thing, or it's creating headaches for this team member or whatever it might be. So yeah, always asking the question, is this possible? Always looking for things to streamline that task or eliminate that manual handling as much as possible.
I think a lot of providers are often looking for like a large swung axe to make them more efficient, but so much of the time it's those micro actions. Like, what's that thing that we can automate over here? What's this little bit of extra work that we're doing over here? And that's that principle of just systemizing and scaling and improvement, those 1%ers that just continue to make a business better. And what you're talking about there is exactly that, because it just asking that question like once a month, going, hey, new feature, because currently we're doing this and it sucks. Is there something else that is going to improve that for us? I imagine that if a provider came to you and said, hey, we're doing this, this, and this, have you had providers come to you and say, this is an issue that we've got, and you've been able to either go, we're working on that, or it's a cog in the process at the moment?
I think we get things like that almost every day in regards to feature requests. We're very, very open to feature requests, absolutely. And a lot of the stuff that is in Astalty has come from feature requests. Did you guys know it stands for a solution that actually listens to you?
I did not. That's awesome.
There you go.
I was wondering what it stood for, actually.
Yeah, I was wondering.
I used to ask me that for such a long time.
It's a pretty weird name, eh? Like, people call it all sorts of stuff. We get old salty, Astalty. Yeah, we get all sorts of stuff. But, we have to live up to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Our company, ethos, listening to people, because, that's where the best ideas come from, people on the ground. We're not just building stuff because we think it might work. We actually listen to people. We listen to business owners every single day. And that's a big part of why we jump on these calls with people, to find out how they're using the system. And there's always like interesting ways that people are using the system that I've never even thought of, which is always fascinating to me. But yeah, I mean, like, one thing that we've implemented most recently, people are getting delayed with payments, right? From the NDIS, from plan managers and stuff like that as well. Being able to automate or send the service agreement as soon as it gets signed straight to the plan manager. That was a feature request that we were able to implement quite quickly. So that kind of can speed up the turnaround time for payments, because if you haven't got a service agreement in place, depending on the plan manager, they might delay the payment until that point. So lots of little things like that.
That's amazing. I like that you talk about checking in and talking about new features, because I heard, it could have been Paul who told me the other day, that it's something like 80% of a system is really, isn't used, that only 20% of the actual features in a system are used by providers, or by not just providers, by tech users around, all systems. And that, when I am talking to people who are looking at moving systems, generally it's because they're not actually using the features or they're not using the system correctly. And there's generally a lack of training and a lack of understanding of the abilities within the system. And I think that, for retention, that's a great strategy for you. I'm interested to know some examples of clients you've worked with and kind of what kind of results you've been able to get as far as optimizing their business. Have you got some case studies or some stories you can tell us about some of your clients and the results that they're able to get while using Astalty?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that we have one of the most kind of like loyal fan bases in, all CRM space in the NDIS. Like if you do a search on Facebook, most people who are looking for software in support coordination, almost every comment talks about Astalty or mentions Astalty. And it's not just Astalty one word. It's like a paragraph of Astalty is amazing, their customer success. They get back to me almost immediately. They implement change. All these sorts of things. And I shared one on Instagram, like a screenshot. And then I looked back through like some of the history of some of the other kind of like screenshots that I'd shared. And one of them was an email from a provider. And they said that they just joined and they were able to get their weekends back, right? Because they used to spend all their entire weekend just invoicing, right? That's all they did, manually creating an invoice, sending it off, reconciling, following up, all that sorts of thing. And now that's completely automated with Astalty. There was another story, and I think I did a post on LinkedIn about this. A client called me and they're like, yeah, I had to let my dad go. He was doing my invoicing and now I don't need to do that anymore. So I was like, oh, sorry about that. Like, let your dad know, apologize. He's like, it's all good. He didn't like doing it anyway. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. So yeah, the invoicing has been a big one. And it's funny, like James and I met through Airtasker because he helped me build a QuickBooks export to Proda so I can do my bulk uploading like 7 years ago. So now we're kind of like still doing that just on a much, bigger and better scale with Astalty.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, listening to these case studies, and I know I haven't given you a pre-warning of this question.
Sure.
I'm wondering what the future looks like for Astalty. You've come a really long way in the last 6 or 7 years, and you've got a raving fan database that loves what you do. What's the future look like for you? What's next?
We originally started Astalty to assist with scheduling, for my other business. That was the main goal. We just kind of like got sidetracked with support coordination, and we kind of spent a lot of time there solving that problem, but we're very, very close to finalizing it and we're kind of finished there. So we want to get back to the main reason, which is scheduling. So we just started, James is writing the first kind of lines of code and just starting to get that happening. So I'm very, very excited about that. I cannot wait to solve that problem. I know it's a big problem for a lot of providers. And then I think like just trying to get as many bits and pieces into Astalty. We keep talking about tech stacks, but I want to get rid of all tech stacks. I just want Astalty to handle everything for your business, and do it as efficiently as possible so that, your business can run as smoothly as possible. There's so much, providers spend so much time, trying to organize things, trying to fill supports, putting out communication to support workers, tracking documents. There's just so many opportunities for software in this space that haven't yet been explored. And I think it's like we're very much still in the early stages. Like most software platforms have just kind of solved the very preliminary problems of like rostering or storing, participant information. But there's so much more potential there to explore. So I'm very keen to dive into that.
That's brilliant. Look, you guys have built an amazing community where you're very proactive around, helping providers to, work on their businesses and grow their businesses, which is brilliant. I think Tania and I have both had an opportunity to, present some information there, which is fantastic. And as I said, like I've got a number of clients who are using Astalty who are part of that raving fan base. They just go like, yeah, absolutely, 100%. Astalty is where we need to be. So I think that really talks to the fact that you are not just an item of software for the industry, but a very, very proactive business solving solutions for NDIS providers, which is fantastic. Look, how can people get in contact with you and find out more about what you guys are doing with Astalty and then the updates that are coming?
Sure. So if you're interested in the school community, it's school.com/NDIS. You can join the school community there. if you're an NDIS business owner, it's a great place for discussion around all things business. We host regular webinars as well on a whole bunch of different topics. So check us out there. As well as that, astalty.com.au. You can connect with us there as well. So
wonderful. That's great. It's been so lovely to have you on and to catch up to find out what you guys are working on. We really look forward to seeing what's next and seeing where you go with Astalty and how you evolve to have this one solution. I can't wait to see when you get there and have a play around with it. I think it sounds like there's lots of great things coming there. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. This week we are going to be joined by Tommy and Jackson Trout from Inclusive AF to talk about their next adventures as well. So stay tuned for that. And I guess that's it for now. Thanks, Paul and Jonathon, for joining us today.
Thanks for joining us, buddy.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Profitable NDIS Provider Podcast with Tania Gomez and Paul Bryan. We hope you found today's episode informative and valuable. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a rating, and share it with others who could benefit from our insights. Until next time, keep thriving.